One thing that helps us when we're drawing graphs is knowing our extrema. For those of you that are not well versed in Latin, extrema is the plural form of extreme. So extrema are going to be all of the points on our graph where we have extremes. Usually when we're thinking about that, we have two different types of extremes. We have a maximum, or plural maxima, or we have a minimum. Now, with each of those, we need to realize that a max has to be an area where the graph changes direction. So if I have a graph that changes direction like this and there's a peak to my graph, I have a max. If I have something like this that goes on forever that way, we can't say it's a max because max means biggest, and that never gets to a biggest point. So that's not a max, that's just continuing to infinity. So a maximum is a highest point, and a minimum is going to be a lowest point. Now, when we talk about maxes and mins, there's two different types of maxes and mins. The first one we have is what we call either a global, or sometimes you'll see this referred to as an absolute maximum or minimum. That means that it's the highest high point or the lowest low point. So one way to think about that is if we're thinking about Earth, the highest point on Earth is going to be the top of Mount Everest. That would be our global high point. If we think about local, or what we could also call relative, that just means that it's the highest in that area or the lowest in that area. Or what we call the neighborhood. So with this, your local max or min could be something like Denali. Denali is the highest peak in Alaska, but it's not the highest peak in the world. So it's a local max, but it's not a global max. Same thing if we were talking about deepest parts or the lowest parts on Earth, we could say that sea level is pretty low. Here are the steps for finding extrema with our calculators. When we're talking about this is something that the steps will help you find one max or one min at a time. So if you have a graph that has multiple, so let's say we have something like this, a quartic graph, I have to find both max points independently. So I'm going to follow these steps for this one 3 times. I need to find the extrema for the point here. I need to find the extrema for the point here. And I need to find the extrema for the point here. So we do that using the minimum or maximum function on our calculators. Scroll to the left of the peak, press enter, scroll to the right of the peak, press enter, enter, and it's going to give you your value. Next, we have this equation here. Go ahead, pause the video, plug that in your calculator, and see if you can find the max values and the min values of this function. We'll come back in just a second to talk about it. Now that you've had a chance to try that out on your own, What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and plug this into my calculator and test it out. I'm going to go left to right, and I'm going to start with my maxes and then my mins. So with this one, you probably had to play with your window a little bit. For a window, I would go ahead and set it to something like -10 to 10 for my x's. And then for my y's, we probably want to go quite a bit bigger. What if we go -20 to 200? That should show you all of your maxes and mins. So it looks like we have one here on the left-hand side. We have a max. So I'm going to go to the left of that and press enter, go to the right of that and press enter, and we get a max value Our max value is how high is it. That's going to be 169.717. But our max is at -3.594. Now, looking at this, it doesn't appear that there's any other maxes in this equation. You might want to zoom in on some of the spots just to make sure. Remember, there is the chance of hidden behaviors. But it looks like I just have the one max and the one min. So with these, I'm going to go ahead and use my minimum settings on my calculator, and I'm going to get that my min value is going to be -6, and it's going to be at 1. So with these, if something is a max, if it's a peak or a valley, it's automatically local. It's global if and only if it's the highest peak or the lowest valley. In this one, since I only had one peak and one valley, we can say as our final answer that we have a global max at the point -3.594, comma 169.717, and I have a global min at 1, -6.